So, confirmation of acidity. Clinically, a rough guide is attained from pH indicators. So you might use litmus paper, or some of those other diagnostic reagent sticks we looked at, or handheld pH meters that I spoke of earlier. What we do is we get people to take the second urine of the morning, EO, every other day for 4 days. So for around 8 days, every second day, they will take their second urine of the morning. And what we then do is we average that. Because there may be some meals that someone will have eaten on one night, and the reflection of that will be in their urine the next day. Say they have half a leg of roast pork one night, the next day they'll likely have relatively acidic urine. Okay? So that's why we don't ever take just one and say, oh, you must be dumping lots of acid. We average it out over 4 or possibly more samples. pH generally, in a healthy individual will be roughly between 6.4 and 6.8. A pH below 6.3 will indicate that the body's tending toward a hyperacid state, especially if we take another sample at 2 p.m. What happens if you take urine around 2 p.m., this is assuming someone wakes up at 6 in the morning, they've been awake for 8 hours, is we're now going to see how the body buffers acid as it's created throughout the day. So, at 2 p.m, 3 or 4 p.m, we actually want to see, if we take a urine sample, we're going to see how efficiently the body is buffering the acid, because that's when the body will buffer it most effectively. Okay? So sometimes we'll take second urine of the morning and afternoon urine as well, depending on what we need to understand. If the afternoon urine is still incredibly acidic, it indicates that person does not have either that there could be some kidney issue that needs to be addressed, or secondly, that they have very poor alkaline mineral stores, so their body cannot buffer that urine when it should. Saliva, ideally pH around 6.5 to 6.8. Remember, as I said earlier, if we're swallowing a pH of above 7, it can do 2 things. Number one, salivary amylase. So the breakdown of carbohydrates in saliva and some that goes on in the stomach will not function, because enzymes only work in specific pHs. In salivary amylase, pH 7 down to around pH 1.5, so it can keep acting in the stomach. So above 7 though will also not just mean that salivary amylase may not be functioning properly, but more importantly than that, that we're actually going to damage protein digestion by having a decreased acid state within the stomach itself. Generally though, we say pH above, saliva pH above 7 and urine pH in the 5s indicates acidity in the body. However, it also indicates that the body is using lots of minerals to buffer itself. So it's actually more desirable in some respects at least to see saliva pH above 7 when we're seeing urinary pH in the 5s, because it can show us the body is able to try and redress that balance. Here we have a slide. Damaged lipid layer through acidity. Okay? The lipid layer that we are talking about here is a very important lipid layer. It's a lipid layer that actually makes a cell membrane. Because what we know is that when the inner cell membrane becomes more stabilised and structurally sound and less leaky, and we actually see them quite leaky when there's a lot of acid surrounding the cells, better energy or ATP production occurs. For the body to regulate itself, cells need to produce sufficient cellular energy, or in this case, we're basically talking about ATP. If a cell does not produce sufficient cellular energy, that cell will not be able to regulate itself, and over time we will see some level of dis-ease occurring. We all know what occurs though when cells get completely dysregulated and have very low ATP production, either cell death and destruction. And we even know, and it's quite well proven now, that when mitochondria no longer produce ATP, or energy production no longer occurs within the mitochondria, but outside the mitochondria via a process called glycolysis, does anyone know what illness we see with that? It's actually seen in cancer cells. One of the fundamental things we need to do to keep people as healthy as possible is we need the cells to make sufficient energy on a daily basis to regulate themselves. And, unfortunately, excess acidity over time, because it causes this destabilisation of the various cell membranes, will very negatively impact the amount of energy that the cells can make, and thus the way the body regulates itself. So this is why I'm saying that Dr. Robert Young's quote that if you have negative emotions, it's eventually going to cause cancer, that the emotions are acidic and eventually the negative emotions will cause cancer. I'm starting to look at exactly what happens in the body for that to occur. So as I say, I'm not disagreeing with what he's saying, I'm trying to explain his message in that book. So, there's a lot of anti-medicines prescribed today. We have antihypertensives, okay? We have antibiotics, we have anti-inflammatories, and we also have drugs that are designed to decrease acid secretion in the gut. They're proton pump inhibitors. So they might be, we may know patients taking things such as Losec, Zoton or Somac. What effect does decreasing gut acid actually have eventually on someone's total acid levels within the body? Let's have a look at this slide here. What we see over on the right of the slide is we see fundamentally that what these parietal cells basically do is that they actually will combine carbon dioxide and water, and then they split it apart to produce hydrogen ions. Remember, hydrogen ions are in fact what creates acid, and fundamentally a bicarbonate buffer. If you block that production there, which is what these proton pump inhibitors do, yes, we prevent gastric acid buildup, but we also prevent the body from producing other bicarbonate ions to buffer acid that occurs elsewhere in the body. So fundamentally what occurs when we get people taking these for prolonged periods is that they wind up in a hyperacidic state. And many people don't understand this because they say, no, the drugs are designed to stop the acid. And yes, they stop gastric acid, but they actually impact the way your body can actually regulate acid produced by other things in your metabolism. So let's look at a summary of what I've covered. Interestingly, we talk often about inflammation when we're looking at bioregulatory medicine, the way the body regulates itself as an active cleansing process of the body, and also of this area, the extracellular matrix, which is the key for regulation because it's the home of our psycho, neuro, endocrine, immunological interface. Inflammation is all about cleansing this area. Inflammation is also about specific enzyme cascades occurring. When we have certain pHs out of range, this cannot occur. And this means that we may not be able to cleanse a psycho, neuro, endocrine, immunological interface. The body cannot regulate itself if there's damage or dysregulation occurring on the PNEI. Please remember, treat fungal infections because they can be a very strong contributor to an acidic pH. Always keep that in mind if you're seeing people who are apparently particularly acidic. Of course, diet will always play an essential part in restoring balance. Remember though that sodium bicarbonate and sodium bicarbonate products will act as a buffer, but they don't assist the body regulate its own pH in the long term. Remember, magnesium is essential for regulation of pH and it allows the body to regulate the pH in the long term. The key point here, or the last two key points I really want to look at, is the middle one there. All enzymes have specific pH ranges that they will function optimally in. Cells in the Krebs cycle, in the production of the fundamental cellular energy, adenosine triphosphate, there's a number of enzymes there. If the pH in the cells is not right, we will see very poor production of ATP, or cellular energy. And as I said earlier, the body cannot regulate itself. The body cannot maintain real health balance if the cells do not have energy they need. And excess acid will affect cell membranes, and hence another pathway by which cellular energy is disrupted, and ultimately cause dysregulation. So the quotes that we hear on the internet, you've got to be alkaline or else you're going to get cancer and die. You better be alkaline because all chronic illnesses are caused by acid. I think I've illustrated quite well today that very many of those comments may be true. However, what I wanted to give you all is a better understanding of why those comments are true. On that note, I'd like to say thank you very much for giving me the time to speak to you today.